Alright, so I'm going to be completely honest with you. I almost didn't watch SportsCenter tonight because I figured it would just be the usual recap of games and highlights. Nothing too earth-shattering, right? But then my phone starts going absolutely crazy with notifications. People texting me, asking if I've seen what they're reporting about the Lakers. And I'm thinking, what could possibly be so urgent that everyone needs to reach out right now? So I pull up SportsCenter on my laptop, and within the first 2 minutes of the show, I realize we're not talking about some minor trade rumor or coaching adjustment. We're talking about potentially the most significant, ownership-driven personnel decision in Lakers franchise history. I'm talking about reports that the Lakers' new ownership group, specifically the people who've recently increased their stake in the team, are allegedly pushing hard behind the scenes for the front office to make an aggressive run at trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the way the SportsCenter crew was breaking this down, with the level of detail and the confidence in their reporting, this isn't just speculative nonsense thrown out there for clicks. This appears to be a legitimate power struggle happening right now within the Lakers organization about the direction of the franchise. So let me walk you through exactly how SportsCenter presented this story tonight, because the framing and the context they provided was absolutely crucial to understanding why this is such a massive deal. Scott Van Pelt opened the show by immediately addressing what he called the biggest story in the NBA right now that nobody's talking about publicly, but everyone's discussing privately. And you could tell from his tone that he was treating this as serious investigative journalism rather than typical sports talk speculation. SVP introduced Adrian Wojnarowski, who joined the show remotely. And Woj started laying out the timeline of how this Giannis to the Lakers conversation has been evolving over the past few weeks. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump in, let me ask you something that takes 1 second. That like button? Hitting it right now helps this channel more than you know. It's how we reach thousands more fans with this content. Just smash that like button real quick. It's the biggest way you can support what we're building here. Every like matters, so hit it now. According to Woj's reporting, and he was very careful to cite his sources as multiple people within the Lakers organization and around the league, there's been a significant shift in the power dynamics within Lakers ownership recently. Now, we all know the Buss family technically still controls the team, with Jeanie Buss as the controlling owner. But apparently, there are minority stakeholders who've been increasing their financial stake, and along with that increased investment has come increased influence over basketball operations decisions. And these newer ownership voices are reportedly much more aggressive and impatient about the team's current trajectory than the traditional Buss family approach has been. Woj explained that these ownership figures, he didn't name specific names, but he strongly implied we're talking about some of the high-net-worth individuals who've recently joined the Lakers ownership group are looking at the current roster construction with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and they're asking themselves a fundamental question: is this core actually good enough to win a championship, or are we wasting precious years of generational talent by not being more aggressive in upgrading the roster? And apparently, the answer they've landed on is that incremental improvements around the margins aren't going to cut it, that trading for role players like Keon Ellis or Herb Jones isn't going to move the needle enough, and that if you really want to maximize this window with LeBron and Luka, you need to make a blockbuster move for a legitimate superstar third piece. Enter Giannis Antetokounmpo. The SportsCenter panel spent a good amount of time breaking down why Giannis specifically has become the target of this ownership-driven push. And the reasoning actually makes a lot of sense when you hear it laid out. Brian Windhorst joined the conversation at this point, and he was explaining that Giannis represents everything the Lakers desperately need right now. Elite two-way impact, someone who can dominate in the paint on both ends, a player in his absolute prime who still has 5 or 6 elite years ahead of him. And most importantly, someone whose timeline actually aligns with Luka Doncic rather than LeBron's. Windhorst made this really compelling argument that the Lakers' biggest problem isn't that they don't have stars. They have LeBron, who's still incredible, and they have Luka, who's a generational talent. Their problem is that they don't have anyone who can consistently get high-percentage shots in the playoffs when the game slows down and defenses lock in. They need someone who can just bulldoze to the rim through contact and either finish or get fouled every single time down the floor. That's what Giannis does better than anyone in basketball. And pairing that with Luka's playmaking and LeBron's all-around brilliance creates a genuinely unstoppable big three that could compete with anyone in the league. But here's where the Sports Center coverage got really interesting and where you could tell they'd done serious reporting on this rather than just speculating. SVP brought up the obvious question. Okay, even if the Lakers' ownership wants Giannis, and even if Giannis would theoretically be a perfect fit, how do you actually make that trade happen from an assets and salary perspective? And this is where Woj dropped some information that honestly shocked me because it suggests the Lakers are willing to go way further than I think most people anticipated. According to Woj's sources, the ownership group that's pushing for the Giannis trade is willing to authorize Rob Pelinka to offer basically whatever it takes to get a deal done. We're talking about Anthony Davis potentially being on the table, which would be absolutely insane given that the Lakers just traded for him not that long ago and built their entire defensive identity around him. We're talking about every single first-round pick the Lakers can legally trade under the Stepien rule. We're talking about taking back bad contracts, including pick swaps, doing whatever financial gymnastics are necessary to make Milwaukee say yes. The panel on SportsCenter had a really fascinating debate about whether trading Anthony Davis for Giannis even makes sense from a basketball perspective, and opinions were genuinely split. Stephen A. Smith joined via satellite, and he was adamant that you absolutely make that trade if Milwaukee would do it straight up. His argument was that Giannis is younger than AD, more durable than AD, and frankly just a better player than AD at this stage of their careers. Giannis can do everything Davis does defensively, while also being a more consistent offensive force, who doesn't need plays called for him to dominate. But then Kendrick Perkins pushed back hard on that take, and his counter-argument was actually pretty compelling. Perkins was saying that Anthony Davis, for all his injury concerns and inconsistency, is someone who's already proven he can win a championship in Los Angeles specifically. He knows the market, he knows the pressure, he knows how to play alongside LeBron. Giannis has only ever played in Milwaukee in a small market with way less media scrutiny and expectation. How do you know he can handle the spotlight and the pressure of playing for the Lakers with LeBron and Luka, where every game is analyzed to death and every loss becomes a crisis? Windhorst brought up something I thought was really insightful about the Milwaukee side of this equation. He said that, according to his sources around the league, the Bucks are actually more open to discussing Giannis in trade conversations than they've ever been before. This isn't 2019 or 2020, where Giannis was completely off-limits and untouchable. Milwaukee has watched their championship window potentially close. After winning in 2021, they've seen the Giannis-Damian Lillard pairing fail to deliver the results they hoped for, and there's apparently some acknowledgement within the organization that maybe it's time to reset and rebuild rather than continue running it back with a core that's clearly not good enough to win another title. The SportsCenter crew pulled up some analytics about Milwaukee's current situation that were genuinely alarming. They're in luxury tax hell. They have virtually no draft capital. Their roster is old and getting older, and they have no clear path to improving through free agency or trades given their cap situation. If the Bucks could somehow flip Giannis for a package that includes a young star like Anthony Davis, who's only 31 compared to Giannis being 30, plus multiple first-round picks, plus young players or additional assets, that might actually be the smartest long-term play for their franchise, even though it would be emotionally devastating for their fan base. But here's where the reporting from Woj got even more detailed and specific, and this is what made me realize this isn't just abstract trade machine speculation. There are apparently real conversations happening. Woj reported that there have been preliminary discussions, not necessarily between the Lakers and Bucks directly, but between intermediaries and agents and people in both organizations' orbits, about what a framework for a Giannis trade might look like. And one of the proposed structures that's been floated would involve a third team to help facilitate the money and the asset. The specific scenario Woj described was something like this. The Lakers would send Anthony Davis to Milwaukee. The Bucks would send Giannis to the Lakers. And then a third team, potentially someone like the Nets, who are accumulating assets and taking on salary dumps, would get involved to absorb contracts and route picks to different places. The exact details were complicated, and honestly, I couldn't follow all the salary cap minutiae even as Woj was explaining it. But the basic concept is that this type of three-team structure might be the only way to make a Giannis to Lakers trade actually work under the current CBA rule. SVP asked the question that I think everyone watching was thinking: even if you can figure out the logistics of making this trade happen, should you actually do it? Is trading Anthony Davis for Giannis Antetokounmpo actually an upgrade significant enough to justify the risk and the upheaval? And this sparked probably the most interesting debate of the entire SportsCenter segment, because there were legitimate arguments on both sides. The pro-trade camp, represented mainly by Stephen A., and Windhorst, was arguing that Giannis is a top 5 player in the NBA when healthy, that he's proven he can be the best player on a championship team, unlike AD, who was the second best player on the Lakers' 20-20 title team, and that his two-way dominance would immediately make the Lakers legitimate contenders again. They were also pointing out that Giannis is actually younger than AD despite being in the league longer, and that his injury history, while not perfect, is significantly better than Davis's track record of missing huge chunks of season. The anti-trade camp, represented by Perkins and some of the other analysts who joined the conversation, was arguing that you're creating as many problems as you're solving with this trade. Sure, Giannis is great, but he's also a ball-dominant player who needs the court spaced out for him to operate. And how does that work alongside LeBron and Luka, who also need the ball in their hand? AD, for all his flaws, is willing to play off-ball, set screens, be a roll man, do all the dirty work that allows the stars to shine. Does Giannis have that same willingness to sacrifice his game for the good of the team? Then the SportsCenter crew brought up the ownership angle again. And this is where the story gets really interesting from a franchise politics perspective. Woj was reporting that there's apparently some tension between the traditional Lakers basketball operations people, Rob Pelinka and his staff, and these newer ownership voices about how aggressively to pursue Giannis. The basketball ops people are reportedly more cautious, more concerned about giving up too much, more worried about the chemistry implications of trading away AD, who's been with the team and won a championship here. But the ownership faction that's pushing for this trade doesn't want to hear about caution or patience. According to the reporting, their position is basically, we have LeBron James, one of the greatest players of all time, probably playing his final season or two at an elite level. We have Luka Doncic, a 21-year-old superstar who could be the face of the franchise for the next decade. If there's even a chance to add Giannis Antetokounmpo to that mix and create a super team that could win multiple championships, you have to take that chance regardless of the cost or the risk. SVP made a really interesting observation at this point. He said this kind of ownership-driven push for a blockbuster trade feels very reminiscent of what happened with other franchises in the past, where ownership got impatient with incremental improvement and forced the front office's hand to make a big splash. Sometimes it works out great. He cited the Celtics trading for Kevin Garnett as an example where ownership pushed for the deal, and it resulted in a championship. But sometimes it backfires spectacularly when you give up too much for a player who doesn't fit or doesn't perform. The panel then started gaming out what the Lakers roster would actually look like if they successfully traded for Giannis. And I've got to say, on paper, it looks absolutely terrifying for the rest of the league. You'd have a starting 5 of LeBron, Luka, Austin Reeves probably, Giannis, and then you'd need to figure out the 5th spot. But it almost doesn't matter when you have 3 legitimate superstars. The spacing would be questionable. Giannis and LeBron are both not great three-point shooters at this stage. but the sheer talent level and the two-way impact would be off the charts. Windhorst brought up a comparison to the Heat's Big Three era that I thought was really apt. When LeBron joined Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, everyone said the spacing would be terrible and they wouldn't fit together, but ultimately, the talent was so overwhelming that they figured it out and won 2 championships. Maybe the same thing happens with a LeBron-Luka Giannis trio, where you just have so much star power that the fit issues don't really matter, because you can overwhelm teams with pure talent. But Perkins countered by bringing up the Nets' Big Three of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. On paper, that looked unstoppable too. All 3 guys are elite scorers, but it fell apart quickly because of chemistry issues and fit problems and egos. What's to say a Lakers Big Three wouldn't run into similar problems? Especially when you're asking a player like Giannis, who's used to being the guy, to now be the third option behind LeBron, and Luka. The Sports Center coverage then shifted to the Milwaukee perspective, and they brought in Ramona Shelburne, who covers both the Lakers and has sources around the league. Ramona was reporting that while the Bucks aren't actively shopping Giannis, they're not calling teams and offering him up, they are listening if teams call with serious offers. And apparently, the Lakers have made it known through back channels that they would be willing to have a conversation about a potential framework involving AD. Ramona made the point that trading Giannis would be absolutely devastating for Milwaukee from an emotional and fan engagement standpoint. He's the greatest player in franchise history. He brought them their first championship in 50 years. He's beloved in that city in a way that very few athletes are. The Bucks' ownership would have to be absolutely certain that they're getting fair value in return, and that this is the right move for the long-term future of the franchise. Because if they trade Giannis and it doesn't work out, the fan base will never forgive them. But she also reported that there's a growing sense within Milwaukee's front office that Giannis might be open to a change of scenery himself. He's never demanded a trade, he's never publicly complained, but there have been subtle hints in his comments about wanting to win and wanting to be in a situation where he can compete for championships. If Giannis were to privately tell the Bucks organization that he'd be open to a trade to a contender like the Lakers, that would completely change the calculus and potentially accelerate these discussions. SVP then posed a hypothetical that I thought was fascinating. If you're Giannis and the Lakers come calling, offering you a chance to play with LeBron and Luka in Los Angeles, with all the endorsement opportunities and the market exposure and the championship potential, versus staying in Milwaukee where the team is capped out and old and probably not going to get better, what do you choose? And while Giannis has always been loyal to Milwaukee and appreciated the small market vibe, at some point, doesn't competitive ambition have to win out? The Sports Center panel also discussed the timing of all this, which is crucial because we're only a couple weeks away from the trade deadline. If the Lakers are serious about making a run at Giannis, they basically have to make it happen in the next 10-14 days before the deadline passes. Waiting until the summer creates all sorts of complications, with free agency and other teams getting involved, and the dynamics changing. The sense from Woj's reporting is that if this trade is going to happen, it's going to happen soon. Windhorst brought up an interesting wrinkle about LeBron's role in all this. Apparently, LeBron has significant influence over Lakers' decision-making given his stature and his relationship with ownership, and the word is that LeBron is very much in favor of making an aggressive move to add another star. He's 40 years old, he knows his window is closing, and he wants one more legitimate chance to win a championship. If that means trading Anthony Davis, who he won a title with in 2020, so be it. LeBron is apparently willing to support whatever move gives the Lakers the best chance to contend. But then Stephen A. brought up a point that I hadn't really considered, but that's actually really important. He said that while these ownership figures might be pushing hard for a Giannis trade now, what happens if it doesn't work out? What if they trade AD and give up all these picks and Giannis comes to LA and the fit is bad and they don't win a championship? These same ownership voices who were so gung-ho about making the trade are going to turn around and blame Rob Pelinka and fire him for making a bad deal, even though he was essentially pressured into it by ownership. That's the inherent problem with owners getting too involved in basketball operations decisions. When it works, they take all the credit. When it fails, the GM and the coaching staff take all the blame. And Pelinka is in this impossible position where if he doesn't make an aggressive move, he'll be criticized for being too passive and wasting LeBron and Luka's prime. But if he does make an aggressive move that doesn't pan out, he'll be fired for mortgaging the future. The show then brought on Zach Lowe to talk about the actual basketball fit and how this roster would function. And Lowe's analysis was characteristically detailed and thoughtful. He broke down how a LeBron, Luka, Giannis core would have to play, what kind of role players you'd need around them, how the offensive sets would work, what the defensive schemes would be. His conclusion was basically that yes, it could work, but it would require significant adjustments from all three stars, and you'd need to surround them with elite three-point shooters to provide spacing. Lowe also brought up the timeline issue that I think is really important. LeBron is 40, and while he's still playing at a high level, realistically, how much longer can that continue? 1 year? 2 years? If you trade for Giannis expecting to compete for championships over the next 5 to 6 years, what happens when LeBron declines or retires and you're left with just Luka and Giannis? That's still a really good duo, obviously, but is it good enough to justify giving up AD and all those picks? As the segment was wrapping up, Roy provided one final piece of reporting that felt like the most important detail of the entire discussion. He said that according to his sources, this trade exploration is real and serious, not just speculation or leverage or agents floating ideas. There have been actual preliminary conversations between the Lakers and intermediaries about what a Giannis trade might look like. Whether those conversations ultimately lead anywhere is still very much uncertain, but the fact that they're happening at all is significant. SVP closed out the segment by acknowledging that this story is going to dominate NBA discourse over the next couple weeks, leading up to the deadline. Are the Lakers really going to trade Anthony Davis for Giannis? Is Milwaukee actually willing to move their franchise icon? Will ownership's push for a blockbuster move win out over basketball operations' more cautious approach? We don't have answers to these questions yet, but the fact that we're even asking them shows how serious this situation has become. Watching that entire SportsCenter coverage tonight, I was struck by how much smoke there is around this fire. This isn't just one random report from a questionable source. This is Adrian Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst all saying independently that there's real substance to these Lakers-Giannis discussions. The reporting was too specific, too detailed, too confident for this to be completely made up. Now, does that mean a trade is definitely going to happen? Of course not. The vast majority of trade discussions in the NBA never materialize into actual deals. But the fact that the Lakers' ownership is apparently pushing this hard for Giannis, the fact that Milwaukee seems at least open to listening, the fact that we're this close to the trade deadline when these kinds of blockbusters tend to happen, it all adds up to a situation where I genuinely wouldn't be shocked if we wake up one morning next week to news that Anthony Davis has been traded to Milwaukee and Giannis Antetokounmpo is a Los Angeles Laker. And if that happens, if ownership's push actually succeeds in landing Giannis, the entire landscape of the NBA changes overnight. The Lakers would immediately become title favorites with a big three of LeBron, Luka, and Giannis. The rest of the Western Conference would have to figure out how to compete with that kind of star power. And we'd be talking about this as potentially one of the most significant trades in NBA history. That's what I took away from SportsCenter tonight. This isn't just rumor mill speculation anymore. This is a real situation that's developing in real time with real pressure from ownership to make it happen. Lakers' new owner pushing for Giannis trade, based on everything reported tonight, that's not a question anymore. That's reality. Now we just have to wait and see if they can actually pull it off.